Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of NRL Nostradamus, where I'm joined once again by my co-host Luke Dicko Dixon. How are you, son?
Diz, I'm great. How are you going, mate?
Mate, ready to rock and roll. We are
Good
about
stuff.
to do the top eight and where we think they are currently sitting coming into Christmas. Now, Dicko, we're going to start this week off with an absolute humdinger. The Newcastle Knights, they finished last season in eighth position. They had a negative 40-point differential. What did you make of their season last year, and where do you see them currently sit as we speak?
Season last year, I reckon they overachieved. And I thought they did really well to get to eighth.
Yep.
And looking at their current situation, where they are right now, Newcastle need to do a lot of work because I don't hold a lot of hope for the men at Newcastle. Hmm.
Would you
I'm not.
say they're teetering towards the wooden spoon?
Yeah. Yeah. So they're my early crow at potentially getting the coveted spoon, I reckon.
Well, look, let's have a look at their points for. They had the second worst points for total. They had 470 points scored
Hmm.
for.
Hmm.
Only team that was worse off was the West Tigers. Now, that's saying something. If you look at the top eight, the Panthers had 580 points versus the Knights 470.
Hmm.
Pretty much everyone else was above them except the Bulldogs.
Hmm.
They didn't obviously concede too many points against them like some of the other sides, but yeah, low scoring affairs, not being able to put teams away,
They're,
their
they're the
half
true,
situations in shambles.
well, they're the true definition of a one-man band, realistically, aren't they?
Mm.
And it's coinciding with a bit of murmurs I've been hearing that in 2026, when James Tedesco's new contract is finished, because he
Mm.
signed a one-year extension, I'm hearing that the Roosters will look at, and there's some mutual interest with him and Kalen Ponga
Mm.
to the
Yeah.
Roosters.
And it ties in really nicely with Mitchell Moses' deal coming to a bit of a head there as well. So could we see Mitchell Moses and Kalen Ponga in the
Well, I feel like
Brooks
for
colours?
Kalen, if there's a really poor season from the Knights, the drums will be beating, and because there's only so much you can sort of take as the marquee guy if your team's not competing for premierships.
Well, look, it seems like nobody wants to be there. Like the loyalty for the Novocastrians are gone.
Mm.
Like Leo Thompson, I believe, wants out. Like their halves situation is actually a joke.
Oh, I feel like their roster's in shambles, mate. It's in absolute shambles. They're trying to move players. They can't move players. They're trying to get players in. They can't because they can't move players.
Mm.
No one wants to go there, as you said.
Jaden
Uh,
Brayley was on the outer. Now all of a sudden they want to keep him. I
so
think
it
they've
just
realised.
it just doesn't make any sense. They got no idea what's going on with player movement or roster. I feel like there's a bit of work for them to be done, and there's still time. As we can see,
Yeah.
I mean, you'll see players move right up until round one,
Yep.
next season. So yeah, I reckon there's some work to do. What that is, I don't know, but they definitely need to do something. Otherwise, I feel like it'll be a long year for the Knights currently at this point in time.
Yep. All right. Well, let's move on to the mighty Manly Seagulls.
The mighty
Now,
Seagulls.
look, not much has changed since last season. Similar result to where they're sitting. They haven't really made, I guess, any key signings in particular. Sort of just been a little bit of a stagnant situation there for Manly. What do you make of their situation, Dicko? Where do you hide?
And no sort of massive off-season moves. A couple of like real workhorses they've got in some sort of older guys, guys that are sort of close to the end of their career, but will offer
Yeah,
something.
Jazz Tavanga and Takeaho.
Yeah, and
Uh,
even Michael Cheekham's played a lot of first grade footy, right? So he'll offer something.
mm,
But yeah, a lot of guys that'll offer stuff sort of behind the scenes may not play consistently week in, week out. But whilst ever Daly Cherry Evans and Tom Travojevic and Jake Travojevic are on the field, I feel like they're always going to be a hard team to play.
yeah,
I've got them. I don't have them in the top four, and I don't have them in the bottom four. So I feel like they'll be sort of mid-table, pushing for that lower half of the eight.
yeah. It's an interesting one, and I guess yeah, you're right. As long as Burbo, Gerbo, and Turbo are still in the mix, that I mean DCE's that we've recently posted about Joey. Uh, Look, watch this space. I think if the Manly Sea Eagles main players can stay fit and
Mm.
healthy,
Mm.
I think they're always in the mix for a top eight, even top four spot.
Yep.
So let's see what transpires. Now, the Bulldogs, didn't they have a
Yep.
fantastic season? One of the best sides in the comp, third best, in fact, behind the Panthers and the Sharks, surprisingly, only by 2 points to the Sharks. But their home record was just as impressive as the Storm, which is saying something.
Yeah,
10
10 and 2.
wins,
Mm.
2 losses. And
Mm.
I'm pretty sure one of those losses came in the last game of the season against the Cowboys, where they got absolutely dismantled.
Mm.
Um, Now, they were probably unlucky to bow out when they did. Maybe overachieved. But can they back it up again is the question.
I reckon overachieve slightly. They do have a good roster. So
Mm,
their top 17, I feel, is definitely good enough to compete, clearly, as they showed last year. I'm concerned they missed out on a couple of targets they wanted in the off season to potentially push them to the next level.
mm,
Because if you think about it, we're basing our sort of early prediction on the two top teams. Has everyone else improved enough to challenge the two top teams?
yeah,
So have the Bulldogs improved enough on paper to challenge the top two teams? At this point in time, right now, no. But that's purely just on paper. That's without playing any games of footy, right? So
yeah,
they've brought in Tupanua who will play. They've let go of Addo
yep,
and Skelton's gone. They brought in Tuala. I definitely feel like they've added a little bit, so they've probably got now a really good top 20, top
yeah,
21. But in terms of like, have they taken the team to the next level? I'm not sure on paper. I don't know whether they
yeah.
can get to the heights that they got to. A lot for them
Where do you
last
think they're
season went
lacking?
went right.
Their forwards or their backs or
I think creativity they're lacking a little from the seven.
mm-hmm.
So a lot revolves around Matt Burton.
Yep,
All right. So creativity at the back, fullback, and at seven.
yep,
I feel like, yeah, if Matt Burton and Stephen Crichton and Viliami Kikau don't play well, I don't know where their creativity comes from. So I feel like last year a lot went right for them. They had pretty good season with injuries. Their main guys didn't miss a lot of time with through foot with injury.
yep.
So yeah, I'm not sure they can get to the heights that they got to. I feel like they'll compete against everyone. Absolutely. It's a Seraldo coach team, so they will be
Yeah.
competitive defensively. But yeah, I don't know whether they've got the class to go to the sort of next level. Currently, where
Do
it
you think
sits
they'll be
right
in the
now.
eight?
I do think they'll be in the eight, yes.
Yep. Okay. So there's hope for the Doggies fans. There is some very, very strong rumors coming out that Terrell May, sorry, not Terrell May, Leo Thompson is very, very close to signing with the Dogs. So watch this space. Maybe not for next season, but for 2026.
Hmm.
So let's keep our fingers on the pulse there because that would be a game changer for the Dogs forward pack. Now, moving on to the Cowboys. Now, for those of you who didn't listen to the secret signing tunnel, jump on, have a listen. One of the questions the viewers asked was, "What on earth are the Cowboys doing?" Awesome question. Really, really good question. Uh,
Very broad question.
yeah. I mean, look, let's compare the Cowboys and the Bulldogs results here. So the Bulldogs, 10 wins at home, 2 losses. Away from home, 4 wins, 8 losses. So that's one thing that drastically needs to improve for the Bulldogs. However, the Cowboys, who typically you thought, home ground advantage, massive contributing factor here, 7 wins, 5 losses at home, 8 wins, 4 losses away.
Hmm.
So no longer such a fortress. Now, they have lost some key players, Dicko, some really key players there.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Kyle Felt, obviously, he's heading over to the Super League. If not, you could call it retired. Fini Fuiaki, young back rowers, gone to the Dolphins. You've got Valentine Holmes, of course, their goal kicker and leading point scorer after JT gone to the Dragons. And Chad Townsend, of course, they lose some experience there. Now, if you look at the players they've brought in, Carl Lawton, Kai O'Donnell, and Jackson Paulo.
Mm.
They're in a bit of strife.
Well,
And Reece Robson's gone to the Chooks now for 2026. Is Reece Robson the type of player that's going to almost be looking to the future, or is he going to really get stuck in this season?
oh no, I think he'll get stuck in. I love the way Reece Robson plays his footy. I think he's as hard as nails. He's probably top three hook. Well, he's a top two hooker because he's post for New South Wales, so he's a top two hooker in the comp.
Yep.
So yeah, I don't think they'll have any issue there. I'm now looking at it, and since you've sort of said all that, the Val Holmes ones is really interesting because letting him go, I feel like they should have replaced him, or there should be another signing of note because he was on huge money, right? So I don't. Yeah, they're
Well, there's a three-way battle there between Jackson Purdue, Tom Duffy, and Jake Clifford for the halfback spot.
so their eggs are in one basket in terms of the youth. They're bringing youth through. There's no doubt about that. They're bringing some Tommy Dearden's young. The three that you just mentioned are young players that have been touted to have big futures. So
I'm more concerned about the goal kicking
the goal kicking.
because that's such an integral part now in
I
the
think Jake
NRL.
Clifford's.
So,
I think Jake Clifford can kick goals. He's not the worst goal kicker.
yeah, well, that's if he gets the start, right?
Oh, that's
In
right.
that
Oh,
seven
someone's
spot.
someone's going to
So,
have to step up, aren't they? But yeah, I don't know. Their recruitment, they're gonna have to need to find a hooker. Brisbane have got 14 of them, so you can take one of them if you like, Cowboys.
Yeah.
Let us free up some cap space. But
there is some rumours that Blake Moses
no,
might be heading there.
anyone but him would be nice. Thank you. We'll hold on to him, thanks. Yeah. So the Cowboys, I'm not quite sure. I feel like there's a piece missing, and I feel like more will come to light over this next sort of 6 weeks before the season starts.
Yeah. Well, they definitely need a hooker to replace Reece Robson because Granville's obviously retired. And no offense, you can't have Harrison filling in there.
Yes. So yeah, I'm not sure where they're at. I don't know. The thing the Cowboys will always have in their favour is although they didn't have a great home record last season, is their home games and playing in North Queensland in the humidity and the heat. So if they can take care of their home games next season, I feel like they'll be there and thereabouts. Tom Dearden's taking his game to the next level. I feel like they'll be in the 8 next season. But I feel like there's a piece that needs to come before the start of the season, and I'm not sure where that is or who that is.
It's a tough one. Moving on to the Sharks. Now, the Sharks, in my opinion, can challenge for the title next season.
Not a chance.
Not a chance, he says. Look, the addition of Adam Fanua-Blake and the retention of Trindle, if Nicho Hines, and this is a big if, can reach the heights that he reached before, they are a genuine sniff.
So viewers, Dizz he's thrown it out there that the Sharks can challenge for the title, but he's given himself an out by saying if. All right, which means he has zero confidence at all in what he's just said.
I've got big confidence in the Sharks. My confidence in Nico Hines is unfortunately down around my ankles. But I hope for Nico Hines' sake. Look, honestly, I'm kind of sick of talking about it, but he just needs to step up. Simple as that. Step up or get out, as far as I'm concerned. I honestly think this year could be Nico Hines. Are you a fullback at the club, or are you going to take the reins at halfback? If not, we need to find someone else and move you on. That's a big call, and I'm going as far as to say that this year's massive. Because if he does what he did last year and the year before, as far as I'm concerned, he's a waste of money and a waste of space.
Yeah, but he does that during the regular season. The Sharks during finals are a capitulation. This is the problem. This is the problem
as well.
All right. Now, at some point in time, that's going to change. All right. You can't continue to do that. At some point in time, that'll change. But
Atkinson's leaving, so they don't have a choice at the moment.
But they are giving me zero confidence on what they've produced in finals in the last 3-4 years to even go to say that, are they a top 4 team? Probably on paper at the moment.
Yeah.
They're definitely one of the better teams. I definitely feel like they've got better from last season. So, yeah, are they a top 4 team? Yeah, I'd go out of my way and say, yes, they are. But have they got someone to take them to the next level? Yeah, they do. But will they in finals? I don't think so. Adam Fanua-Blake can only do so much. All right?
He's a huge signing. And I'm really ambitious for the Sharks. If I'm a Sharks supporter...
But what prop forwards won competitions? Won teams comps? None.
Yeah, none. Except for James Fisher-Harris.
But he still didn't. He hasn't won the 2023 grand final. Nathan Cleary won it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, they need their halves to step up.
You need the halves.
And Will Kennedy just doesn't cut the mustard. He's not going to win a premiership.
And in finals, the forwards, because all the teams are at that level, the forwards pretty much bash each other and cancel themselves out. It's your playmakers that then create the points, right? So, I don't know. Yes, they are a better team than last year. They're a question mark about where they're going to finish. I do think they'll be in the top 8, so yes.
Yep. Well, let's see. I'm rooting for you, Sharks fans.
I'm kind of disagreeing with you, but kind of agreeing with you. But I can't go to say they're going to win.
Now, who's sitting on the fence? You must have splinters. Now, the Roosters. I can't wait to talk about these guys. I can't wait. Everyone loves to hate the Chooks, if you're not a Chooks fan. Now, sorry to all the Roosters listeners out there. You might want to turn this off. Let's have a look at their gains for 2025. Now, we know Reece Robson's going there in 2026, but we're all about talking about where they currently sit right this second, leading into Christmas for 2025. Absolutely horrendous as far as I'm concerned. They will not make the 8. They have signed Toby Rodwell, whoever that is, plus Chad Townsend. Now, let me read you through who they've lost. Now, I'm just going to get my script here because it's that long. Michael Jennings, retired. Luke Keary, Catalans Dragons. Joseph Manu, gone to Union. Terrell May, West Tigers. Dylan Napa, retired. He's not really relevant. Suali'i, Rugby Union. Tupanua, Canterbury Bulldogs. And Jared Hargreaves to the Super League. They are in serious trouble, Dicko. What do you think about the Chooks right this second for 2025? Where will they finish next season?
You couple that with Sam Walker and Brandon Smith missing probably a third of next season minimum, I would think, with significant leg injuries, ACLs, both of them.
Yeah.
Where will they? Where will they?
I would love to throw them in the spoon. I'd love to put them in the spoon. That'd make my year, I reckon.
So the Roosters season will be set up in the first 10 weeks. And
they're typically slow starters as well.
And the reason why I say that is because I have grave concerns about their first 10 weeks of football without Sam Walker, and Brandon Smith. Where do they go to? Where are their points coming from? James
Mm,
Tedesco, yes, I understand that, but he is one player that can't carry a whole team. My
yep.
concern is the first 10 weeks. If they don't even that out, let's say go 5-5 in the first 10 weeks, they're in big trouble.
Yeah, well, let's have a look at last season. They scored the most points in the comp. Now,
Mhm.
a lot of the games they won, they got out of jail. Dolphins, prime example of that. I think it was 34-30. Uh, they put some massive scores on some teams. They're not going to do that next year. They don't have Joseph Manu to break open a game. They don't have Sam Walker to bring that short kicking game into play. They don't have Luke Keary to do his superstar premiership winning 5'8" work and runs off the ball and those little extra 1%ers that,
Mm,
and leadership that he brings to the side. They don't have their enforcer in Jared Rhea-Hargreaves. They don't have arguably their second best forward in Terrell May anymore.
yeah.
Brandon Smith is nursing an ACL. They're going to have to play
Well, Connor Watson's going to have to play nine,
Connor
and then
Watson at 9.
they've brought Townsend in to fill a gap. So
So their starting halves are Townsend and Sandon Smith.
and they've got. This is no disrespect to the players. They don't have any centers that really I feel like are going to break a game open.
What, and they're going to rely on Lindsay Collins and Nafahu White with Radley in the second row.
And Spencer Leniu up front, right? So yeah, I hold grave concerns for the Roosters.
The issue
I'm
that
not
I've got is
sure.
what's their bench look like?
Yeah, young kids, I would assume, but
I mean, yeah.
it begs the question: what? It's not like that they didn't know that
Mm.
these players were leaving. There were Hargreaves, the Kearys, the Joey Manus, the Suoli'is. It's not like they didn't know these guys weren't going to be there. So what? And I want to bring the Roosters recruitment into question because everyone goes on about how the Roosters don't miss out on players when they offer contracts and all this rubbish. Well, they've missed out on Ben Hunt.
Mm.
Oh, they wanted Ben Hunt. They missed out on him. He chose the Broncos. All
Yeah,
right.
fair enough.
They've missed out on other players. They've
They've let good players go.
they've let a player go in Terrell May, the most randomest way I've ever heard of a player let go. So what is Robinson thinking? Roosters don't do rebuilds. They don't do rebuilds.
Yep.
So I'm a watch this space on the coaching future of Trent Robinson because if they don't get this right this season, I reckon you could pack your bag, mate.
They have just bought a slippery dip because they're going to slide that far down the ladder. It's not funny.
Yeah, I don't have them anywhere. I don't have them in the top eight. I'm afraid right now with what I'm looking on paper, I don't have them in the top eight.
Lost far too many players and experience. They're going to slide down the ladder. Walker and Smith are going to miss a chunk of the season. Yeah, you can wave your finals hopes goodbye. And to be honest, if they make the finals, it may be the most brilliant coaching performance you'll see in the modern
Yeah,
era.
yeah, yeah. Yep, yep.
So, Trent Robinson, let's see how good you are, son. All right, Penrith
The
Panthers.
Penny
Obviously,
Panthers.
4 premierships. I'm going to try not
Here
get too
we
excited
go.
during this segment, but 2 signings, Isaiah Papali'i and Blaze Talangi. They've lost a bit. They have lost a bit. James Fisher-Harris, Jerome Luai, Suni Taruva, Tyrone Peachy added a little bit of depth there. He's retired. Taylor May obviously had his off-field dramas. Isaiah Yongi, backup fullback for Dylan Edwards, has gone to the Eels. They're really going to be tested next season. I say this every year, but next season they are really going to be tested. And I'm not concerned. I think we're going to finish in the 8, but the top 4 it does scare me a little bit. Look, the bit that does excite me is the teams in and around that top 4 have sort of crumbled a little bit. The Bulldogs haven't done much, Cowboys haven't done much, Roosters haven't done much. So I'm kind of like, yeah, we haven't been that great recruitment wise, even though Isaiah Papali'i, you'll probably find couldn't even make the starting lineup at the Tigers and were probably instrumental to Penrith's another season of potential success. But I am worried, Dicko. I'm worried.
I think there's zero concerns about the Panthers not making the eight. Personally, there's zero concerns there. They're too good of a club, too good of a team to not make the eight. So for me, there's zero concerns about making the eight. They're going to be there. All right.
Mm.
Firstly, secondly, it always comes a time when you win premierships that players don't have to go, but go because they're going to be offered more money. Right. It's just this time. So not counting the previous seasons when they've lost Burton and that and whatnot, and Crichton, for instance. I feel like this season in particular, they haven't quite been able to replace what they've lost on paper, right?
Yeah.
I've got concerns around not necessarily the 17 that'll take the field, their best 17. I've got concerns around if you start to lose or Penrith start to lose players through injury.
Yep.
They have been able to, in previous seasons, cope with that quite well. Right? You've been able to move a Matt Burton into 5'8" if Jerome Luai's out. You've been able to move Jerome Luai to halfback if a Nathan Cleary's out. You've been able to cover that. This season, that's where my concern. Now, they might go through and have a really great season injury-wise. And I think then you can probably start talking about them again in the top four. But if they don't, and they have a season a la like the Broncos or the Rabbitohs did, that's where my concern sort of happens. I don't know what their 5'8" recruitment and what they've got in 5'8" with Jerome Luai leaving really concerns me. Really, I think Blaze Tuolangi is at least 2 seasons away from being the player that people expect him to be. Now, Ivan might produce an absolute masterstroke and he might win 5/8 of the year next year, and good on him if he does. But right at this point in time, what I have seen from him at the Eels and playing for Samoa didn't fill me with a lot. Didn't fill me with a lot of confidence.
Horrendous.
Yeah. I mean, as I said, I feel like there's no chance that they're going to miss the 8. But
look, he's got potential. Blaze Talangi. I mean,
every player that plays in the NRL's got potential.
But defensively, if he wants to play 5'8", he is going to have to move mountains because he can't tackle his wheat bix at the moment. Seriously.
Yep. So the other thing, they're going to have to change the way they play, I reckon, because there's no Luai, right?
Yeah.
So, okay, how does that affect...
Will he even play in 6?
That's right. So how does that affect Dylan Edwards at the back? How does that affect Nathan Cleary? How does that affect Isaiah Yeo? How do they now play? Do they play the same? Does Ivan just put someone into 5'8"?
Isaiah Yeo can play 6.
Well, that's right. Does Ivan put someone in 6 to play like Jerome does, or do they completely restructure their attack? Nathan Cleary has played with Jerome Luai for the last 8, 9, 10 years, all through juniors. So what does he? Where does? No doubt he's a great player, probably still the best player in the game, but where does his game go to next year without that familiarity out the back?
Yeah, is it going to be too predictable?
It's almost going to be a... Well, that's right. Is it going to be too predictable? If you shut down a Dylan Edwards and a Nathan Cleary, what happens then?
What happens now?
What happens then, okay?
Is Blaze Talangi going to come save us? Probably.
If the forward packs get on top...
Fisher-Harris.
Without Fisher-Harris, if they get on top, what's going to happen there? I'm not sure. So this is almost more of a massive sort of, let's see how they go.
I tell you what, if they come top 4 again,
it's intriguing,
and win a comp, the rest of the comp need to be embarrassed and ashamed of themselves.
Yeah.
I
got nothing more to say on that than
Before we go into the Storm, just want to have a massive thank you to our major sponsors this season, Create, Grip Socks, and Energy Pro. Thank you so much for all the support you've given us this year. For everyone listening and watching, get around them. We always get around those who get around us. Check them out. Mention our name. Use our codes for discounts. If you can't find them, send us a message. We'll sort you out. Now, Dicko, the Storm. I will go as far as to say that they are almost a shoe-in to win the comp next year. They have signed Stefano Utakamanu and Moses Leo as backup and lost nobody. Cameron Munster is going to be
fully fit.
And that's scary for the rest of the comp.
Yeah, so there's no doubt that they should compete again. I mean, anything less than a top 4, it's a failed season for the Storm. I think their biggest question mark comes with Craig Bellamy's new role with New South Wales Rugby League. Now, I'm not going to say that it's going to be detrimental to the Storm, but he has moved away from being involved with New South Wales Rugby League for a long time for the fear of that getting in the way of his Storm commitment. So I think taking up this position is really interesting. And that's going to be more of a watch this sort of space. But whilst ever you have Hughes, Grant, Munster fit and on the field, I mean, they're the best spine in the competition. They're the best 1, 9, 7, and 6 in the comp. So wherever those guys are fit, I think they're going to be competing. And as I said, anything less than a top 4, I think it's a failed season.
The only question mark I have on the Storm is weirdly around Jerome Hughes. Will he be able to emulate the season he just had?
I mean, I think so. I don't know.
I hope he does.
I don't know whether he needs to go to that level because he played a lot without Munster and they work so well together and he sort of had to take the reins. But yeah, I don't necessarily think he has to get to that level again for them to be competitive. I feel like they'll be competitive regardless.
And is the likes of Sean Bloor going to step up to the mark again? Eli Katoa, I have no doubt about with his combo with Hughes. They've obviously added the depth with Moses Leo to the side. Few players have moved on, but probably surplus to requirements. Yeah, like I said before we got into the nitty gritty, I think they have one hand on the trophy already before the season's already started.
I mean, yeah, they're the out and out favourites for me early on, just on paper, in terms of they made it to the grand final. They haven't lost anyone. They've essentially made their team better with Utai Kamanu coming in. So yeah, I feel like they're going to at least top 4. I can't go out on a limb and say they're going to win the comp because it's just so hard, but definitely top 4. And they should be top 2 realistically because they're playing their home ground such an advantage to them. So, they should be top 2. They should be winning most games at home.
Yeah. One club state. So
exactly.
Let's see what happens. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in again. Remember to catch us on the other side of Christmas for our previews for the upcoming season in depth. We were going to go through each team, dissect them in depth, who they've signed, who they haven't signed, where we think they're going to finish, where are their strengths, where are their weaknesses in the lead up to the 2025 season. We'll be all talking things all Supercoach and fantasy. The team picker comes out, I believe, potentially even later this week, but I think next week. So after everyone does 500 different combinations on their side before the season starts, we'll see where everyone lands. But if I'm going to go out on a whim here, Terrell May should be in every single person's team for next season. So watch this space. Thanks again for tuning in. Cheers, Dicko, and look forward to catching you all on the other side for 2025.
Thanks, Diz. Merry Christmas.
Disclaimer. Any views or opinions represented in this podcast and or Facebook and social media pages are personal and belong solely to the podcast owners and do not represent those of people, institutions or organizations that the owners may or may not be associated with in a professional or personal capacity. Unless explicitly stated, any views or opinions are not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, organization, club, company, or individual. All content provided on this podcast is for informational purposes only. The owners of this podcast make no representation as to the accuracy or completeness of any information on this site or found by following any link on this website. Owners will not be liable for any errors or omissions in this information, nor for the availability of this information. The owners will not be liable for any losses, injuries, or damages from the display or use of this information.